Warning, disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised on this very heavy topic that I'm about to talk about today. The very disturbing mind of Albert Kinsley, or Kinsey. Disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act, 1976. Allowance is made for fair use of, for the purpose as such as criticism, common news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, research. Fair use is used or permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise. Okay, Albert Kinsley was an American sexologist, biologist, and professor of entomology and zoology who in 1947 founded the Institute for Sex Research at the Indiana University, now known as the Kinsey Institute for Research in Sex, Gender, and Reproduction. These are the books that he wrote: Sexual Behavior in the Male and Sexual Behavior, Human Behavior in the Female. These books are very important. Albert Kinsey's thoughts on children and X are shockingly controversial and viewed as shocking and disturbing by modern standards. He believed children were X from birth and that child and adult X contact could be harmful. This is nasty. He thought it was beneficial. These views were based on flawed and unethical sourced research, which has labeled to widespread commendation, as it should. That's nasty. Kinsey and his researchers claim to have evidence that children were X beings from the moment of birth. He argued that infants' response to physical good God, this is nasty. Y'all, this is the definition of this word because I can't say it because YouTube will try to take down my video, but that's exactly what this is. You can't. There are no excuses for what I just read. This is what it is. That's exactly what it is. There are no excuses for what that man did. From birth, he argued that their responses to physical contact were X in nature. He viewed X between an adult and child as a normal behavior, that social conditioning made it taboo because it's illegal, as it should be, because it's gross. Children cannot consent. That's nasty. He asserted that adult and X could be a health. I can't read that. God, that's horrible. Especially if the adult Kinsey argued that the social hysteria, how is that, over molestation was more harmful than the children that the acts themselves. This man was a God, I can barely read that sentence. Which is this word, y'all? You cannot excuse that man's actions or what I just read what he said. This is what that is. You can't deny that, especially when you see his research. Yes, he has research on this. Ignoring non-consent. Critics point out that Kinsey's work did not address non-consensual X effectively, arguing that abuse like that in child X did not I can't even barely read this because how disturbing and absolutely disgusting this is. Kinsey's conclusions were based on deeply flawed research methods and relied on unreliable sources to obtain his data. Kinsey gathered data on children X from trained observers, who were later identified as including individuals known to hundreds of children. His research included documenting cases where children show signs of distress and violence, reactions, crying, emotions. Oh, God. Which, again, is the definition of this word, which I can't say. I can't even read half that sentence because of the words that are in there. Ugh, this is disgusting. But this is how they think. This is how they think. Kinsey and his colleagues did not report in their study to the authorities. A former Kinsey Institute director even admitted to refusing to cooperate with the police, seeking involvement in. He also accused them of manipulating the data. That is this word. Nobody can make no excuse for that type of behavior. It says Kinsey's work and advocacy had significant harmful consequences. He testified before legislative bodies and collaborated on legal codes, arguing that to liberalize sex offenses laws. His findings were used to justify reducing penalties for offenses like child, which contributed to the increase in later decades. His ideals on early childhood X development because of the bias for certain types of X education materials. The legacy of Kinsey's flawed and unethical research continues to generate controversy, and critics and argue that his work contributed to this. That's exactly what he was doing. And helping them. This is the article that I'm getting most of this information from, so I wanted y'all to see the actual article. Deconstruction Dignity by Eradicating Shame. I'm gonna let y'all read this because it kind of sounds like this article is making an excuse for the behavior that you're gonna see the testing he did, which is very disturbing, and I don't know how he wasn't put in jail for it. It says Kinsey Rockefeller Foundation finance books burst onto the scene in 1948 and 1953 to be providing, because the font's so small, the scientific truth about the X morality of the greatest generation. He claimed to have proven that the greatest generation hypocritically portrayed themselves as X-moral, while, truth be told, they were very immoral men and women. Kinsey's scientific statistics not only liberal adult fathers and mothers, husbands and wives, but also claimed that children were from birth capable of why would you want to know that? But why would you want to know that? By X content with gross. This is the research that he did. Yes, from children, from young boys, 198 boys under the age of 12. And yes, you do see infants on there. Why would anybody want to know? I don't want to know that from an adult. Why would somebody want to know that information about? It says, I can't say that word either. In the attic of his home and it was soundproof rooms in the Kinsey Institute. Below are some of the reports, statistics from Kinsey's. This is from one of his books also. Look at these. Like, I can't say none of this. Okay, it says they cannot overstate the fact that the mass success of Kinsey's claims rested on his data, which proved adults were misbehaving with World War II standards without bad consequences. Hence, any laws and rules shaming and were groundless. And then in the female volume in 1953, Kinsey claimed that out of the subjects none were really harmed from the R word. Whew. His institute is still very much there. So in 2023, they were trying to shut it down. And on his website, he talks about how it was unprecedented action in the very foundation of academic freedom and critical research on sexuality, gender, relationships, and reproduction. So you cry about freedom when they're trying to shut your school down, but he could care less about the freedom of those children and the women that he didn't consider to be brutalized. But where was their freedom? Where were the children's freedom when they were first forced to do those things against their will? Whose freedom are you really protecting? Again, Kinsey characterized the X of children as despite accounts from the children themselves of violent reactions and crying, he concluded that these children, he thought they enjoyed it. And the actions, again, he keeps saying he thinks that they were harmless. If the children children cannot give consent, and they were crying. God, it keeps getting worse. It says he downplayed the emotion and physical trauma of, in one instance, his team described the case of it, I can't say that all, and young girls who were approached but concluded that the injury did not appear to be acceptable. Damn it. It said that he wrote in another book that women desired to be. They also suggested that the primary difference between a good time and the R word was the woman's parents were awake when she returned home. Kinsey research falsely portrayed American men are widely involved in, including they had committed horrible crimes. This is hard to read. Oh, this is hard to read. Kinsey and his colleagues formerly worked in influence legal reform, which led to the reduced protection for victims of his work with the American Law Institute on the Penal Code in 1955 was used to justify easing penalties for including the R word. This included legal changes that created statutes of limitations for reporting the R word and required proof that I can't read none of that. Kinsey testified in legal cases to advocate for less severe treatment of offenders. For instance, he urged California's legislations in I can't read it. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge.